All right, what's up, Rohan?
What's up, guys? How are you?
Good.
Good.
So this is episode 7 of Future of Finance. We have Rohan, who went to our school. He's actually a founder of Rauxmont Capital, and he attends Babson College now. So it's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'll get started with the questions. Like Jamal said, you graduated from our school in 2023 and you went on to Babson College. Did you know going into Babson that you wanted to be a founder?
I did. I knew I wanted to be a founder, but I think there was this voice also telling me I wanted to go into finance. Um, and I think there was always this conception that you go and work in finance a few years and then you make a bunch of connections, learn, then you go be a founder. Um, and I thought that was the path I was going to take. And then when I got to college, applied to a bunch of jobs, got stuck in that, corporate matrix, as some people would say. I realized it's not for me, and I ended up starting a business. Of
Thank you.
course.
So
Okay.
I'll ask another question. So what was the original, so you started Archangel, I hope I'm saying that right, before Rosemont. What was the original idea behind that?
Yeah, Archangel was built on the premise that there was a lot of founders in the CPG space, like in consumer products, that were struggling to receive funding. And we thought if we developed an integrative platform where we could connect tailored investors to the right startup, we could have them collaborate together to, really have successful outcomes. And throughout that process, we ended up getting access to some really, really cool companies. And I think that's what ended up leading me into the pivot of starting Rauxmont Capital. But that was over an 8 month time period.
Thank you.
Okay, so you were building Archangel while also being a student at Babson. So how did you sort of balance, school with also demands of running a startup?
Yeah, nothing is as easy as it looks. I allocated most of my free time to working on the business. It was to the point where if you were doing anything else, playing basketball, throwing a football around with your friends, even eating at the dining hall, you felt guilty. Why wasn't I working on my business? It gets toxic to a certain point. Um, but eventually I realized just doing stuff for the business doesn't mean you're growing. So I realized that needed to focus on doing more meaningful things than just doing things. And the best way to have meaningful outcomes is to have a balance. So I ended up, going to class as much as I could, using the resources that were provided to me to, kind of scale our business. Um, and living a little. You go to college once. I put the laptop aside once in a while, and you went to that party, went out in Boston, whatever it was. And I think doing that ended up making me more successful at the end of the day. Without it, I don't know where I would be. Probably, pulled all my hairs out by now.
Thank you.
So, Babson is a school that has like a very like entrepreneurial premise. How did being in that sort of environment with, I'm sure, other founders surrounding you really help you grow?
People say you're a product of your environment, right? So I think being around such a diverse group of people that was so motivated and so active and always working on something all the time, it makes you feel like you're not doing enough. And at the very minimum, it makes you want to start something. So I didn't come into Babson with a business idea or even the thought that I was going to start a business. But seeing how easily other kids my age were doing it and how well they were doing and how much money they were making, it gets you over that initial hurdle of you need to start something, right? I think people are like, oh, I want to start a business, I just don't have an idea. I ended up interning for a few people and I put myself in the right positions to find that idea and find the right people I want to work with. An idea for a startup is only one thing. I've never seen a startup that had one idea from the start and kept it throughout. It just doesn't work that way. You keep pivoting and pivoting and pivoting. So I think just being in that entrepreneurial ecosystem is what got me over that initial hurdle. And then being able to leverage the resources and the professors and the people around me is what helped me scale and succeed.
Thank you.
Okay. So how difficult was it to leave something that you had helped build from the beginning, especially when the company was still growing?
Very, very difficult. Probably one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make because not only have we built something so great and put together a team, we had raised money from people we knew. And I had to go back to them and say, hey, that thing you invested in, I don't do it anymore. Sorry, you know? So it was very, very challenging. But there's this concept, it's called the sunk cost fallacy, where you just keep doing something because you've already invested so much time into it. I think it's the smarter situation to realize when, something's not a right fit for you and take a step back. Because the further you get into that rabbit hole, the harder it is to climb back out. So, it wasn't easy, but it was definitely the decision I had to make for myself.
Thank you.
So, like, how did you leverage the network you built while building Archangel into the startup process of Rauxmont?
Yeah, so a lot of the people I met in the space for Archangel were investors. They were people who worked in the venture ecosystem. And for Roman, I was trying to figure out how can I bring in great people into great deals and be the person spearheading it all at the same time. And from Archangel, all the people we met were in the same ecosystem, just targeted towards a different goal. We were building a platform similar to the typical AI B2B SaaS startup. Um, and I didn't want to build a startup. I wanted to build a firm. So I used those people I met and I said, hey, I'm not working on a startup anymore. I'm working on something actually much simpler, much easier. We want to give people like you access to things that are hard to reach. Um, is this something you might be interested in? And taking it from that approach was a lot easier. You know, a lot of connections I made from Archangel I no longer speak to because they were solely for that business. But that median percentile we were able to convert, it went a long way. And a lot of the times when people are backing a company, they're not backing the idea, they're backing the people behind it. Like I said, startups pivot all the time, but you have to be invested in the person because as long as you believe in the person, then you're way more confident in your investment. If someone inevitably pivots, it doesn't matter because that person you backed is still behind it all.
Thank you.
Okay. So for someone who has never heard of Ramen Capital, how do you explain what the firm really does and the problem that it's trying to solve?
Yeah, I would qualify us as an alternative investment firm. We essentially source exclusive high-profile deals into late-stage companies. So companies in that window of 1 to 3 years before they go public. And we allow retail investors to invest in them through something called a special purpose vehicle, an SPV. We don't consider this a traditional VC firm where you trust us with your capital and we'll go invest it for you. We give you the offering up front, we give you the details, and we let you make a decision based off of your knowledge and what you believe in. Right now, if you wanted to invest into, OpenAI, Anthropic, or SpaceX a few months ago before they went public, it's not like you could just, go on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ and use your brokerage account to buy shares. And I felt there was a really, really large portion of people in my network that would love to get into these opportunities because while they are high risk, they have had a huge boom in the past few years, and they offer something what we call venture scale returns, which is essentially returns you don't see in S&P 500 investing. So that was essentially it. That's how we operate, and that's what I would qualify ourselves as.
So when
Thank
you
you.
look at a potential company to invest in, what are like the first things you evaluate?
One, like I said, the founders. I think that's the biggest thing. Two, how close they are to an exit, what their valuation is, what their size is, what they're working on is very important. You know, a lot of these companies right now trade at really high multiples to their revenue or EBITDA because the market's hot. We're talking about sectors like AI and defense right now are very, very highly traded. I think that's not a bad thing because if the market's willing to pay it, the market's willing to pay it. But as an investor providing an offering, you have to understand that from the get-go. There's no boilerplate template. You know, I think every company we look at through a new lens based off of what industry they're in, how long they've been doing it, what their expertise is, why they're doing it. It's you know a big group of things that leads us to making a decision. But like I said, at the end of the day, we're an access point. So we do our own diligence in our deals, and we make sure our investors do their own because we don't want our investors to be bought into something they don't believe in. Like, don't take my word for it. The opportunity, do your research, see if you like it, and then let's have a conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're significantly younger than most people that are running sort of investment firms. So how do you sort of establish credibility with other investors or professionals in the market?
Yeah, you know, that's a very good question. And transparently, it was difficult. For the first 6 months of building this, I I would say I built up a lot of goodwill. When people wanted access to these opportunities, I wouldn't do it myself, but I would tell them, "Hey, here's how you could do it." And I would give away all the knowledge I knew in hopes that one day I would be able to have an offering myself and I would be able to syndicate an investment. And I got people to trust me at the end of the day. It's a relationship game. And I'm never selling people on the offering. I'm selling them on myself. And if you can get over that initial hurdle of, you know, he's only 20 years old, you can start to look at, you know, the opportunities we have to offer. I will say there have been a handful of people who have chosen not to move forward with us solely because of how old I am. And I'm okay with that because I don't want anyone coming into one of our investment vehicles that isn't 100% confident in their investment. Because if, you know, it goes well, then they got lucky. If it goes wrong, they knew better, right? So that's essentially what it is.
Thank you.
So looking 10 years ahead, what do you see Rauxmont Capital accomplishing?
You know, the goal is to be a massive firm. I'd love to have over $1 billion in assets under management. We're not quite there yet. We're a little ways away. Um, but I want to create a team, create a family. I've seen enough people build firms from the ground up and see how amazing it can be. And when we're working on this, I want everyone to feel like they're in it together. I think there's a sense of inclusivity and belongingness I want everyone to feel at my firm. Um, but you know, it's one step at a time. I think we can look 10 years out and say we have these goals, but I see goals as a cap. You get to your goal and then what? They're good to have. They're good benchmarks to set, but I think any goal we look at, we want to, you know, blow out of the water. So probably a runaround answer to your question, but I don't know. It's the first thing that came to mind
It's a good answer. Thank you.
first.
So how do you think AI will sort of affect venture capital? Do you think it'll be beneficial or would it be negative towards your firm?
I mean, AI is the premise of what my firm is right now. These companies that everyone wants access to are all rooted in AI, large language models or they're something else, like every company right now is using AI. And if it's not an AI company, it's a company that's powering AI, chips, semiconductors, whatever it might be. Um, it's interesting because it's powering it now, but if you look at a graph, it's kind of all the same money that's been being circulated around. I'll send it to you after this, and maybe you can put it up for the viewers.
Okay. Yeah.
But this industry is kind of it is built on a when that bubble is going to pop, I have absolutely no clue. But I'm going to ride the wave as long as I can. So, I think it is 100% the backbone of all of this.
So you think it's beneficial?
Yeah, and it streamlines my entire operations. Like I'm able to, process large amounts of information significantly quicker, optimize my daily life through AI, and I'm one person. Imagine how, big firms are utilizing this and every other company out there.
Yeah, I agree.
Besides AI, are there any other areas of technology you're interested in investing in?
Yeah, I'm really big into defense right now. I think defense technology um, is a very exciting opportunity because, there's large amounts of capital from our government being allocated to defense. Um, and what that allows for is really exciting technology for, United States to stay number one or however you want to frame it. Um, and what's very interesting about defense is I don't think it's causing war, it's more so preventing it. When you develop these new technologies and you create all these amazing things that these governments have to work with, it it makes any threats take a second look, you know? So maybe that's not the right course of action. So I'm a big supporter of it. I think, we see what's going on in the Middle East. We saw what was going on in Russia and Ukraine. Um, that, it's not great to look at. And if people are creating technology that can kind of mitigate that stuff, I'm all for it.
Thank you. So, another question I have is you took a huge risk. I know you said earlier you were thinking finance rather than starting something. How do you like what would you say to young people who are still weighing the options from that risk? Do you think 10 times out of 10 you take that jump, or do you think sometimes maybe you just stay the course?
No, I would recommend you don't take the risk. This doesn't work out most of the time. It took years to get me something that actually worked, something tangible. There were so many days I wanted to quit, so many days I didn't want to do this anymore. And so many days I regretted my decision of taking the risk. Um, and a lot of me getting here was luck at the end of the day. I might have put myself in the right places at the right time, but I would be foolish to say some of my getting here wasn't from luck. And I think the way I evaluated it was this. I let's say I take the risk and everything fails. Then what? Do I have a safety net? Do I have something to fall back on? Well, for me, thankfully I did. I, could have used my Babson degree and tried to leverage it for a job somewhere else. Or, I have a very supportive family that could have helped me out. That's not the case for everyone. So you have to weigh, what's in it and the downside. For some people, the answer is very simple. You're a genius. You have a great idea. You already have a bunch of money from your parents. I mean, what do you have to lose? But for others, it's not as clear cut. And I know the idea of, oh, I can make so much more money doing this, but it's like at what cost? And will it actually happen?
Thank you. It's a great answer.
Yes, that's great. What's one mistake that you made while building Archangel or Rauxmont that other young entrepreneurs or investors you think can possibly learn from?
That's an interesting question. I make mistakes every day.
Yep.
Um, I think the biggest one was I trusted people too blindly and I took things at face value. There's so many times when you're building a company, people will look like they're offering a helping hand. And they'll tell you you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, we're gonna do this together. And you almost blindly believe it because they're selling you on this vision that you have in your mind. And they're looping you in, they're bringing you into it. And at the end of the day, a lot of those people are just saying stuff to say it. You know, all the time, people will make false promises and then not deliver. Um, and I would say the second biggest thing is don't count your money until it's in the bank. There were so many deals I quote unquote closed where I was gonna make so much money, and then when it came time for the last step, everything falls apart. And by then, I've already spent some money that I didn't even have. And foolish of me, I should have never. But you just get so excited, you get so caught up. But yeah, I would say those are the biggest two. I don't know. Don't count your eggs before they hatch. However the analogy goes,
Yeah,
run
yeah,
by that.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you. And so last question. I know you're turning 21 soon. So if you could go back 5 years in time and tell your 16-year-old self one thing, what would that be?
Oh God, this is tough. This is tough.
Yep.
Hmm. I guess in terms of business, I think the one thing I would tell myself is to take the risk earlier. I lingered, I waited too long. I missed out on over like a year and a half of opportunity. Um, and I would say to piggyback off that is to trust my gut. I've trusted a lot of people, I've heard a lot of things, but the only person who I think I can trust the most is myself. You know, most of the time I'm right. Even if I didn't make the right decision at the time, I was still right to make that risk, to take that chance. Um, I'm very calculated and methodical in everything I do. So I think the number one thing would be to like trust my intuition and trust my gut because a lot of the times I listen to other people and all it did was set me back. Now, once again, take that at face value. There were so many people that also helped me get where I am. I didn't get here on my own by any means. The people I have surrounding me now are like, without them, I would be nowhere. So, you know,
Thank you. That's really
Thank
insightful. A lot of people can benefit from that, but that's all
you.
the time we have today. So this has been episode 7 of Future Finance with young founder Rohan Nagpaul, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. All right.